On July 4th this year, 2021, my friends on YouTube put up videos, hashtag let freedom ring. Well, since I don't shoot or anything like that, I figured I might put something else out. This is to remind everybody of where we stand in this country. The Constitution is not a document for the government to restrain the people. It's an instrument for the people to restrain the government. Now, some time back, they said that most people view the possession of arms, it's vital for resisting tyranny, and that to be disarmed by one's government is tantamount to being enslaved by it. The possession of arms by the people is the ultimate warrant that the government only governs with consent of the governed. Now, some people are saying that the First Amendment is sufficient to preserve our liberty. That belief is that liberty can be preserved as long as men freely speak their minds, and that no tyranny or abuse like that could ever survive if it's exposed in the press, and the truth would only be disclosed, and those people would be shamed, and the truth shall keep us free. History is not that kind, people. It's not. You start looking at mass communication and papers and all this stuff. Well, Hitler used that to his advantage. The radio, the press, they're just like tools, just like guns. They can be used for good or evil. Hitler, after all, was a master orator. Uses radio to very good effect. He is well known to have pioneered and exploited the propaganda opportunities afforded him by film. Remember that. And our Congress and the Senate and them people, they get all wound up with this FDR thing, that FDR couldn't get his own way, so he broke the law by circumnavigating the Constitution, by instituting laws that are unlawful. And Congress just followed suit. And in 1968, because of Kennedy getting killed by our own government, then they used the emotions to, oh, people, we got to have gun laws, no more mail orders, we got to have more control over the people. Oh, this is just getting out of hand. Congress has never had the authority or the power granted to them in the Constitution. Nowhere in the Constitution is granted the authority to abridge, restrict, or infringe in any fashion whatsoever guns or ammunition. Thus, all restrictive laws made by Congress, all regulations made by the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms are unconstitutional, is outside the scope of powers granted to Congress and to the executive branch by our Constitution. Restrictions of arms and ammunition is not one of the enumerated powers granted to Congress or to the executive branch. To illustrate the enumerated limited powers, consider the General Welfare Clause of Article 1, Section 8. The passage contains the clause to be read simply as authorizing Congress to tax and spend for the general welfare, as some read it today. Congress would have been granted all but unlimited power, and the enumeration of other powers would have served no purpose. But the passage must be read as permitting only spending for enumerated ends. Similarly, the power given to Congress to regulate commerce among the states could not have been a power to regulate everything that affects commerce, which in principle would be everything. That would have made it pointless on any kind of limits imposed by the enumerations. Rather, the Commerce Clause was primarily meant to restrain state powers to ensure the free flow of goods and services among the states. Congress was given the power to regulate such commerce, to make it regular, people. These limitations are reinforced by the Necessary and Proper Clause, which means that it's available to Congress that are only ones that are necessary for executing the enumerated powers. Without such means, the enumerated powers cannot mean anything. Our founding fathers intended the doctrine of enumerated powers to be our principal defense against overbearing government. If there was no power to do something, the government could hardly use that power. But, so anyway, it comes along in 1789, our founders decided, well, we haven't ratified the Constitution yet, and we'd like to, but we need more restrictive clauses in there that limits government. That's your preamble to the Bill of Rights. Now, and a lot of times your Congress and the Senate, they don't look at, when they look at the Constitution, they might look at part of the Constitution, but they ignore the amendments to the Constitution, and they don't realize that it was put into the Constitution long before it was even ratified. So anyway, the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution ratifies and preserves for every citizen the right to keep and bear arms, and neither Congress or any other instrument of the federal government can infringe upon that right. They are constitutionally barred. Period. You know, and people want to kind of twist and invent things against the Constitution. On every question of construction, let us carry ourselves back to the time when the Constitution was adopted. Recollect the spirit manifested in those debates. And instead of trying what meaning can be squeezed out of the text or invented against it, conform to the probable one which was passed. Tell me what, people, Congress was given no power to violate the individual rights of the citizens. Liberty is the right of all human beings, and their government is established to protect those rights, not to regulate them. That preamble to the Bill of Rights states, 1789, the convention of a number of the states, having at the time of adopting the Constitution, expressed a desire, in order to prevent misconstruction or abuse of its power, that further declaratory and restrictive clauses should be added. That would give the public more confidence in government and the institution. And this wasn't ratified until December 15, 1791. Something else. A well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now notice underneath that, there's no subparagraph A, B, C, D, which would stipulate what an acceptable infringement would be. So none is allowed. They are constitutionally barred from making firearm laws. Period. Congress has no power. They took this upon themselves after the FDR thing back in the 30s. They go, well, we can do this and we can do that. You can't do that. The Constitution says no. One of our problems is, after 1865, Harvard School started this thing about case law. And they got away from interpreting the Constitution as it was meant. So then you had all these judges writing laws, and when our so-called people since the 40s, 30s and 40s, they're going to school. They're not studying the Constitution, people. They're studying the writings of what judges said about the Constitution, making that judge the law and not the Constitution itself. Period. You've got to wake up to what's going on. They're not going by the Constitution. You know, that it's a conflict of interest, really, with the Congress and the Senate and the Supreme Court of the United States. They're going by what is political. That's what they did during FDR's time. They were following that instead of following the Constitution. That's why we're in such a big quagmire today. We're in bad shape. We've got to get back to the Constitution. And I'm not kidding. When I talk about the government doing things like Pelosi and Schumer and Feinstein and we got to do this, we got to do that. No, they don't. They don't have the power. It was beyond the scope of power granted to the government by the Constitution. The primary purpose of the Commerce Clause, when they put it in there, was to prohibit the states from imposing taxes and tolls on merchandise as it was transported through the states. And the general welfare has nothing to do with we got to protect the welfare of America by keeping guns out of the hands of people. No. All the welfare does, it's for the enjoyment of peace and prosperity and the ordinary blessings of society and civil government, period. Has nothing to do with handouts, public relief, or doing whatever the feds think is a good idea. Our framers, they understood that the general welfare was the enjoyment of peace and prosperity, and the enjoyment of the ordinary blessings of society and civil government. It was only possible with a federal government that had strictly limited powers. Necessary and proper clause, they can't use that either. No. That was delegated to Congress for the necessary and proper so they could execute the declared powers, the ones that are enumerated. Okay? It's the execution of powers already delegated and enumerated in the Constitution. No additional substantive power was granted in the clause. Period. And now you got government doing just whatever they want. And that's against the law. They're breaking the law themselves and then blaming it on you. It's like when they passed that law, the 68 gun law, after Kennedy got killed. Government kills the president and then they make you pay for it. How many times have we seen this happen? You see something happen and doggone well some shadow government thing is pulling this off. It's not the people themselves. They want control, people. The only way to get control is to get the guns. Period. That's how it works. You got to remember something. No nation ever retained its liberty after the loss of the sword or the wallet. And the best way to disarm the people, or the best way to enslave the people, is to disarm them. And no clause in the Constitution could ever be conceived to give Congress the power to disarm the people. Can't do that. Freedom? How can you be free? You walk around and you say, oh wow, we live in a free country. Do we? You only have that if you stand up for your rights. If you don't know your rights, you lose them.